Necessity of an accurate portrayal. There has perhaps never been a more critical time for studying the life of the Prophet ﷺ. The amount of misinformation coupled with a general ignorance about Islam has led to much confusion and bias. So many people hear only a few tidbits about one or two incidents in the life of the Prophet and then make a decisive judgment concerning his character or the message of Islam that he brought. Such is the nature and power of false propaganda. To make things worse, the modern educated mind assumes that the ability to think critically is sufficient to make such judgments, regardless of whether all the facts are present or not. This perverted state of affairs is like that of an intelligent judge who passes verdicts based on his reasons without pausing to weigh and weigh the available evidence in front of him.
All right, Jazakumullah. So this author's talking about, look, there are people that are intelligent, but if their things are presented to them in the wrong way or they don't have all the facts, then they'll make a wrong determination, a wrong judgment. So there's many people that get only a few things about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they think that, okay, they know everything, or they have enough information to pass judgment on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and what he did in his mission. As Muslims, we know that the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is a miracle in and of itself. That how, in the period of 23 years, he sallallahu alayhi wasallam was able to transform the world. Right? And every time you read the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, you learn about something, you derive benefit from it, and you're able to take that situation and apply it to your own life. All right, let's have Mubashir.
Muhammad's life story actually represents the history of Islam in its final manifestation. How he received revelation, the persecution and difficulties he faced trying to propagate the message, and the eventual spread of Islam throughout Arabia and beyond are all part of that history. The life of the Prophet of Islam gives a picture of what Muhammad was really like.
Yeah. The author, remember, he wrote it for a general audience, so he doesn't always say Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we're reading it, every time you see the word Muhammad or Prophet, say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inshallah.
How did he behave in public, private, and what thoughts went through his mind? After receiving revelation from Allah, people responded to his message in several different ways. One group rejected him and labeled him an impostor. Another group considered him to be self-deluded and thus turned away from the message as well. The final group accepted him as a true prophet and followed the guidance he brought. Today, many people classify themselves into a fourth category of apparent neutrality. They claim to reserve judgment concerning the prophethood of Muhammad ﷺ and cannot make up their minds. Their hesitancy is rarely the result of timidity and usually arises out of an intellectual laziness or a concern for things related to religion. Someone might ask, there are so many important persons in history, and my time is limited. Why do you insist I investigate and make up my mind about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
It's a very important question. Very important question, and because, think about it, there's so many influential people in history. People will say Buddha, some will say Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and throughout history. Why do you want us to talk about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What makes him unique? Right? And he answers it here.
The answer is simple yet multifaceted. Muhammad ﷺ's claim to be the final messenger with the ultimate book of guidance from God is wholly unique from any other leader, philosopher, mystic, artist, etc. Whoever believes or is willing to believe that a supreme intelligence not only created this world but communicated the purpose behind existence will find in Muhammad ﷺ a conduit through which that message has been communicated. His life must be read without prejudice, and taking the facts as they are, rather than coloring them with the hue of another religious philosophical
paradigm.
paradigm.
So here, we say that the Prophet ﷺ is unique in his message, that he's the last messenger, and that he's come with the uncorrupted scripture. So anybody looking for guidance, right? What we'll say is that there are a lot of people that are apathetic, a lot of people are uncertain, a lot of people are unsure. Read with an open mind. Read with an open mind. And the author will get to it. But even if a person reads with an open mind, let's say they don't accept Islam, right? But they'll gain respect for the Prophet ﷺ. They'll see the principles. There's many people, like everyone knows the story about Michael Hart, the 100 most influential people in history, and he named the Prophet ﷺ number 1. He's not Muslim. But he benefited from the seerah and the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and there's many people who have written, a lot of Orientalists wrote about the Prophet ﷺ as a person, how he strategized, how he thought, how he had foresight, and things of that sort. All right, let's have Umar.
If a reader is unwilling to take such a bold step, then at minimum they can make up their mind about certain key questions regarding Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Was he kind or cruel? What led him to engage in warfare? How was his message spread? How did he treat people who disagreed with him, etc.? Having
Unbiased answers
to these questions not only determine an individual's attitude towards Islam, but also affect the collective public opinion of a nation, which in turn could have such a drastic consequences as a massive genocide.
Alright, think about it here. Let's go back for a second. Think about it. If people think that Islam is a cruel religion, or they think that Muslims engage in warfare for no reason, how Islam was spread by the sword, that the people who disagree with Islam and Muslims are to be executed and killed, right? If they think that, which a lot of people do, right? What is the consequences of that? People will be on the defensive. People will view Islam as an evil, inherently evil religion. And in places, because of this fear and this unknown, they have targeted people just because they're Muslim. So what's one of the ways that we can dispel all of these things, right? This, by reading the Seerah of the Prophet. Go back to the source. Yes, will you have people who claim to be Muslim and associate themselves with Islam that do promote this negative type of ideology and thinking? Yes. But the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is free from that and that type of thinking. You guys understand what I'm saying? Go back to see how the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam interact with people. Alright, about for us as Muslims, or maybe let's continue.
The need for Muslims to know the Prophet. Muslims are in as much dire need of getting to know their Prophet as non-Muslims are. The following reasons are only some of the main benefits that can be accrued from such a study.
Obtained and grown? Yeah, go ahead.
Proof of prophethood. His life serves as a proof of his claim to prophethood. In order to be a Muslim in the true sense of the word, a person must be convicted that Muhammad
Convinced
that Muhammad ﷺ was indeed what he claimed to be, a prophet sent by Allah. For that conviction to be firm and grounded, it should be transcend mere inherited beliefs and be based on knowledge. It is not a difficult task to believe Muhammad ﷺ was indeed telling the truth after studying his life. His life story reveals that he had no ulterior motives for undergoing the difficulties he went through. His sincerity and character, coupled with the glaring clarity and consistency of the message that he brought, have convinced millions of people, even in the overly skeptical secular Western society, to adopt the religion of Islam.
Alright, this is important because Mustafa, the author, there was a period of time, he was born and raised in a Muslim family, but there's a period of time that he left Islam and he wasn't really practicing, and then he came back to Islam. So one of the things that alhamdulillah brought him and a lot of others back to Islam is that to read the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. As children, we're taught, right? La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Right? That there's no one worthy of worship except for Allah, and Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger. But as Muslims, there are many Muslims throughout the world that have a very superficial relationship and understanding with the Prophet ﷺ. Right? We all know that we need to love the Prophet ﷺ more than ourselves, more than our parents, more than all of mankind. But how can we love him ﷺ when we don't know anything about him? So when we read the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, it puts us on the thing, okay, why should we love him? Oh, now I understand why. Because he made so many sacrifices, he was patient, he was compassionate, all of those things, inshallah. Alright, let us have, was somebody ready?
Role model. He's an example for everyone who wants to follow his in his footsteps. The Quran says, "Indeed, you have an excellent example in the Messenger of Allah." Elsewhere, it speaks directly to the Prophet. Indeed, you stand on an exalted standard of character. Everyone needs a role model in their life. It is a human necessity. However, modern pop culture and marketing is ruthlessly indoctrinating Muslims, young and old, who are like empty cups under a waterfall, to adopt ethically bankrupt entertainers as their role models. Even those Muslims who are more firmly grounded in knowledge and understand the concept of Islamic identity are still in danger and forced onto the defensive. Such a phenomenon of globalized pop culture is purely driven either by greed or cultural arrogance, rather than a sincere desire to see others prosper. The best defense for a Muslim is to take the Prophet ﷺ as a standard of what a role model should look like, and Islam is a filter for determining what qualities deserve admiration in a person.
Yeah, and this is the key. Is it prohibited for us to admire qualities from non-Muslims? Is it? Yes or no? No, it's not. But what's the filtering mechanism? If those qualities and characteristics conform to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Let's say someone's hardworking. Let's say someone's honest. Let's say someone's determined. Let's say somebody's courageous. Right? Those are all noble characteristics. Why? Because we see in the embodiment of the Prophet ﷺ, we see those characteristics. So we admire any person or anybody who comes close to the Sunnah of the Prophet, we admire them. Any person who goes away, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, that goes away from the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, we leave those teachings because our standard is the Prophet ﷺ. And this is a human necessity. This is a human necessity to look after people and want to be like people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet ﷺ himself, ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيم. The Prophet ﷺ was told to follow the sunnah and the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after mentioning that, said, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ فَبِهُدَاهُ مُقْتَدِي. These are the ones Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided, so follow their examples. Alright, that's there.
Grounded love. Someone may have great love for a person without knowing them very well. However, that love is very shallow and can disappear when they learn more about the person. The love received by most celebrities and famous personalities has little grounding because their fans and followers know little about what they are truly like. Muslims are instructed to love the Prophet ﷺ more than anyone else in this world, including their own selves. In order to acquire a deep and grounded love for him, they must know what type of person he was, and how much he cared for his followers, and even those who didn't follow him. People are loved either because of their own intrinsic qualities and behavior, or because of what benefits they give others. From this perspective, the Prophet ﷺ is loved by Muslims on both accounts. First, the fact that he was chosen by Allah means that his qualities and characteristics were attested to by the creator of the universe. Second, his teachings served as a practical guide for how to please Allah, even several centuries after his demise. In fact, he was told in the Quran to declare to people, say, if you love Allah, follow me, and Allah will love you and forgive your sins.
SubhanAllah. You see that the Prophet ﷺ, the name, one of the names of the Prophet is Mustafa. Mustafa literally means chosen one. So he was chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of his qualities and characteristics, and we see that he guides people to the straight path. We know that our purpose of creation is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If somebody asks, how do we do that? We find guidance in that through the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Another big issue that we face is that we go to extremes. There are some people that will compartmentalize their lives. Like they'll follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in certain aspects, but in other aspects they'll neglect the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So we have to look at the balanced picture. Yes, if you want Ibrahim to read, or you can read either way.
His balanced picture.
Yeah.
His life reveals a balanced picture of how the messenger of Allah really was. There is many aspects of his life which are neglected by Muslims due to their ignorance. Other aspects are overemphasized.
Emphasized?
without even realizing it. Scanning through 100 or even 1,000 reports about how the Prophet and his companions will not give a full picture of the Prophet. If they are limited to only one aspect of his character and span only a few days of his life. A more holistic view is needed, which is provided to a comprehensive history, which is a holistic, such a holistic view also reveals the strategic decisions that he made throughout his life. His mission of 23 years underwent several stages in transition, from keeping the message secretly to an openly proclaiming it, from putting up with persecution to fighting back, etc. Each strategy had a context and provided an example of how to react when those circumstances present themselves again.
Good job. So let's say that, the author's mentioned in here, a very important point. Let's say that all we talk about the Prophet ﷺ is about hadith, about the importance of praying in the masjid. That's the only thing we focus on. Right? Is that doing justice to the sunnah and the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ? I know a person, I mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all, he refuses to work. He has his wife and his daughters working so that he and his sons can pray salah in the masjid 5 times a day. Is this Islam? But can it be taking part of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and emphasizing so much on one aspect while neglecting others? And do we as Muslims do that in certain tendencies and regards?
No.
Hey, people do all the time. People do all the time. They'll emphasize their ibadat.
Yeah, then
But then they'll leave the akhlaq.
that's not.
It's not right. I'm not saying it's right. But does it happen?
Yeah, it happens.
It happens. It happens all the time. Intentionally, unintentionally. So what's important for us is to understand the Prophet ﷺ's life from an overall perspective. That the same Prophet ﷺ who taught us how to pray, who taught us how to and what to believe in, also taught us how to be with our families, how to be with our children, how to be with each other. And unfortunately, the compartmentalization, people just look at certain aspects while neglecting others. And what happens when that happens is that the legitimacy of the entire message goes away. I was talking just the other day about why are many people leaving Islam. Many people are leaving Islam because of the abuse of religious officials or people that they're supposed to trust using religion to abuse them. And the Prophet ﷺ, you see how he interacted. Yes, he had compassion, he was kind, but he always held on to his principles and his values. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to do the same. Alright, I'll read the next one. Contextualize the sources of Islam. Right? The Quran is not just in a vacuum. It just didn't come from anywhere. But the ayat were revealed in certain contexts, in certain situations, and circumstances. The life of Prophet ﷺ contextualized the source of Islam, the Quran and Hadith. Without such a framework, isolated verses of the Quran or statements of the Prophet ﷺ can easily be misinterpreted. There are many verses and teachings pertaining to beliefs, morals, parables, etc., which are crystal clear and don't require much context to understand. However, there are other verses and statements which must be understood through their background, history, since they dealt with certain events during the life of the Prophet ﷺ. In the absence of such historical information, these verses cannot be understood properly. The best example of this is the verse of the sword that people always claim. Right, subhanAllah, we just had our open mosque day about a month ago. First person that came, why does your book tell people kill them wherever you find them? Right? Just immediately, right off the bat, I was like, dude, it's not even 11 o'clock yet, we're just about to start, right? But that happens. But at the same time, how do we understand that? What happened before that? There was a treaty between the Muslims and the non-Muslims, which the non-Muslims broke. And the Prophet ﷺ said 4 months. No human interaction in history gives 4 months advance notice. And it said after that, if they attack you or if they violate you, kill them wherever you find them. Why is it wherever you find them? Because if somebody attacks somebody Islamically, in Islamic law currently, if somebody attacks somebody, then they go into the haram is off limits. So in the times of Jahiliyyah, they would find the killer of their father sitting in the haram next to them, and he's like, haha, you can't do anything to me. But Islam changed that dynamic. That if somebody kills a Muslim, right, after the treaty is done, then they can be executed or revenge can be taken upon them through the proper law system, even if they're in the haram. This is what it means, okay? So, contextualize. Take the verse of teaching patience during persecution as an example. If the history about how the Muslims were persecuted is not kept in mind, there is much loss in meaning. The Prophet ﷺ was also accused by his enemies of being a poet. without understanding the importance of poetry in Arabia, the challenge of eloquence that the Quran presented to the literary geniuses of the time, and the hostility of those who denied Muhammad ﷺ's prophethood, it is quite difficult to understand why such an accusation be made in the first place. A final example can be found in the battles which took place between the Muslims and their enemies. These wars have been mentioned by name in the Quran, and without background knowledge of these incidents, a reader of the Quran would be lost as to what is being referred to. When it says Ahzab, what is Ahzab? Right? The Battle of Ahzab, what happened there, right? How do we know what happened there? How do we know there were 10,000? There were Jews, there were Mushrikun, and there were people from Mecca, and there were other people, the Confederates that gathered to attack the Muslims. What were the situation? Why did that happen? Right? How do we know that? Through the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu, alayhi, wasallam. No book can be understood in a vacuum. However, many Muslims today fail to realize the importance of context due to their general ignorance of Islam. This has resulted in a very difficult and dangerous situation where the printed Islamic texts are in the hands or in the pocket computers of virtually everyone, Muslim or non-Muslim. The context must accompany the text if it is to be of any real benefit. Therefore, the life of the Prophet ﷺ acts like a general introduction to Islam. This provides a framework in which to interpret any isolated incident and put it in its proper place. Is there a difference of how the Muslims practiced Islam in Mecca and Medina? Is there a difference? Right? At the time of the Prophet, there's no difference? Why did the Prophet go to Medina? Right. In the beginning of Islam, when the Muslims were a minority in Mecca, did they practice Islam differently than after they made hijrah to Medina?
No.
Of course. Yeah, they couldn't pray in public, they couldn't fast, they couldn't do anything. Right? Why? Because they were a minority, they didn't have power. But when they went to Medina, what happened? They established a Muslim state, they had Jama'ah, they had Jum'ah, Zakah was legislated. So, is there a difference between Islam when you're in authority and when you're not in authority? How you practice it? The principles are the same. Principles are the same. Tawheed, Risala, Akhirah. How you practice faith is different. Is it the same? Let's say a person, as a Muslim, living in America, can we have the adhan on the loudspeaker? Can we have loud announcements at Fajr 10 that suhoor is ending, finish your food? Here, as a minority. But can they do that in Muslim majority countries? So is it different how the demonstration of that? It is, right? So it's important for us to understand. So methodology. Inshallah, don't worry. What he's going to do is he's going to focus on those that are most authentic. And here, it's going to be the significant of, I'm just going to read this from here. Priority has been given to the events the Quran has mentioned. If Allah chose to put an event in His book, then I deem it to be of utmost importance. Second, the information and events selected by most of the Prophet's biographers has been given due consideration. Following this principle not only gives credit to scholars of the past, but also creates a sense of cohesion within the Muslim community about what aspects of the Prophet's life people are familiar with. Third, incidents which teach the most relevant lessons for the average Western reader have been preferred over those that may be specific to certain individuals. One of the reasons why we study history is to understand the present and build the future. This can only be accomplished if we focus on trying to extract lessons from the past rather than viewing them as mere events that have little significance in the practical spheres of life. Everything, right? History can be a very boring subject for a lot of people. Why? Because they keep it in the past. But if you take history and take the lessons from that and put them in your life, then inshallah you'll find it very, very beneficial and useful. Alright, Kamran, let's get off the phone and read precedents for authenticity.
The work attempts to be academically rigorous and give precedence to more authentic sources over less authentic ones. Historically, Muslim scholars did not strictly enforce such an approach when compiling biographies of the Prophet ﷺ. The methodology implemented by these scholars can best be described in the statement of the famous Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal regarding the most famous early biographer of the Prophet, Ibn Ishaq. We may report the life of the Prophet ﷺ and other things from a man like Ibn Ishaq. However, when we come to the lawful halal and prohibited haram, we need strong people like this, and he can persist. The statement shows that a more lax creation of authentication was employed in accepting historical events that did not affect the religion of Islam.
Alright, very important point here. You might read some things in the Seerah that are not in the books of Hadith and vice versa because the criteria of Hadith is much stronger than that of history. And sometimes there's conflict. Historically, there's conflict, right, between some of the scholars of hadith and scholars of history, because scholars of hadith have more stringent requirements. Like Ibn Ishaq is the first biographer of the Seerah. Right, one of the first biographers of the Seerah. Him and Imam Malik, they used to butt heads a lot. Why? Because Imam Malik was a man of hadith. He was a man of hadith, and he said that, no, I don't accept this narration. Why? Because it doesn't meet the criteria of hadith. Right? So you'll see that here. And the reason is simple. Right? A Muslim should not believe something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based on weak narrations. They have to be authentic. Islam teaches what to believe about Allah, how to worship Him, and how to live a proper life. All these teachings are directly from Allah and cannot be mixed up with historical reports of dubious authenticity. However, if someone were to accept that some event occurred in a certain month, or a person was 40 years old, etc., it would not be detrimental to one's belief if that information turned out to be wrong. This is precisely why Muslim scholars have been lenient in accepting historical reports, but very strict in adopting something directly connected to Islamic beliefs or law. However, some authors were too lenient and included whatever stories they found interesting. In fact, one may often find a book which presents teachings not fully in line with the spirit of Islam, even in popular biographies of the Prophet ﷺ. In the present work, we will follow the same methodology used by most scholars, but will exercise more caution when utilizing historical sources, since bizarre or far-fetched stories can lead to much confusion in the minds of modern readers. Use authenticity, right? But there's some things that may be historically debatable. For example, Khadija radiallahu anha, okay? Was she really 40 years old, or was she 28? Some of the historians are different. But at the end of the day, are we taking law from that? Does it affect our aqidah whether she was 40 or 28? No. So that's something that's okay. Okay, you can include it. It's not a big deal. But if someone says, the Prophet sallallahu, alayhi, wasallam sought help, right? Sought help when he was in the cave from spiders and insects, and doves and crows and all of these things. Is that a theological issue? If somebody says Prophet ﷺ sought help from animals and insects? Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ only seeks help from whom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sometimes, especially when people go to Umrah, they'll go to Ziyarah. And you hear the craziest stories. That this bird, you see all these pigeons here, they were the ones, their father and their ancestors were the one that protected the Prophet ﷺ during the Hijrah. And you're like, well, what? Where did this come from? Right? And then all of these things happen. And what happens is that sometimes the harms of narrating stories like that is that those things that are legitimate, they get mixed up. And people are like, okay, if that's not true, what else is not true? Right? So you have to be careful about that. Alright, inshallah, also we talked about this before, highlight lessons from the past. Rather than just narrating stories, this work will highlight lessons behind each event. Such analysis will be built into the story itself. This approach follows a Quranic paradigm, which narrates stories not merely to entertain, but to teach lessons and morals. The lessons derived from each episode will be selected based on how relevant they are to contemporary circumstances. So inshallah, tomorrow we'll start with the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happened before? With the Kaaba? What were the religions that were in the world? Why was the Prophet ﷺ sent? Okay, that's the question. Some people will say, no, when it comes to Ahlul Kitab. Some people say, no, the Ahlul Kitab today are different than the Ahlul Kitab of then. Right? They'll say that, no, the Trinity came after the Prophet ﷺ. Not true. Not true. If they believed in one God, why did the Prophet ﷺ come? Why did Allah say, وَلَا تَقُولُوا ثَلَاثَ? Don't say three. Right? Was Judaism there? Yes. Was Hinduism there? Yes. Was Buddhism there? Yes. So, sometimes when people, they try to make all the religions one, the Prophet ﷺ came to do the exact opposite. And make Islam stand supreme. And make Islam superior. And let people know that, yes, we're willing to work with everybody. But as Muslims, we believe that Islam is the only way of life chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, we'll talk a little bit about the background history, about what's going on in Mecca, and the need for the Prophet ﷺ. And subhanAllah, you'll see that some of these issues that were there are here today as well. And what saved them will save us as well, which is implementing the teachings of Islam. So inshallah, tomorrow we'll pick up our background history. I apologize, today I know it's a little dry introduction, but I want you to know the methodology. Why? How? Some people will say, okay, no, how are we going to cover the seal of Prophet in 60, 70, 65 pages? Yeah, this is what we're going to focus on, what we talked about today, inshallah. And inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow after Dhuhr. If anybody's interested, I also have another book. We're not going to go through it here. If anybody's interested, there's a Noble Life of the Prophet. This is 2,022 pages. Right? We have them over here too, actually, 3 volumes. And that's one of the best Seerah books. Yeah, it's over there on the right side. I think one volume is missing, the second shelf. Right? That's one of the best Seerah books that you'll see, and inshallah you can benefit from that as well. So that's